Absolutely, yes, and Kevin Johns we trust. Jacobe Oliphant is our KD redemption opportunity. And what do you do when you lose the absolute dude that represents RBU and Ollie Gordon? Well, you just do this, especially when you have a few.
You are Locked On Oklahoma State, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma State Cowboys, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Howdy, y'all, and hello, all. Welcome back to Locked On Oklahoma State, your top stop for all things Cowboy and Cowgirl related. My name is Cody Stovall. I want to thank you kindly for stopping by to make this your first listen. We're available on all of your podcasting platforms, visually as well on YouTube. Find me personally on X at Aldeo State. Today, we get to roll right into the conversation of RBU having an RB1 conundrum. Most likely, coming into the season, Rodney Fields was going to be the best candidate to be RB1. He showed several glimpses this previous season. But everybody's going to get opportunities. I know some people don't like hearing running back by committee, but that is essentially what you do when you have a bunch of dudes that are even. And how do we know a lot of these dudes are even? Because it's been a bouncing around effect in the running back room. Trent Howland's had opportunities at RB1. Rodney Fields is going to have opportunities at RB1. Kalib Hicks just got an opportunity at RB1. This week, Sesi Vailahi is going to get an opportunity at RB1. And a decent amount of this seems to be predicated upon, obviously, A, production, but B, fumbles. And whenever you're having a rotation predicated upon fumbles, that's clearly an indication that all of the guys are pretty even. Yes, they do have different running styles and they do provide different things, but Kalib Hicks was the spring MVP for this show. And I think a lot of us would agree, if you got to see some glimpses of what was happening in spring, Kalib Hicks looked like that dude. Rodney Fields obviously looked good. Trent Howland is going to be a very, very good provider, especially in a specific role. And then now you have Freddie Brock. He is the highest rated dude in the EA Sports game, and being fully healthy, he's going to be provided some opportunities as well. There's going to be situational things that obviously pop up into this, but anytime you have a rotation that is somewhat predicated upon fumbles, because here's the deal, let's face it, last season, if Ollie Gordon fumbles twice in practice, is somebody jumping in to replace him? Absolutely not, right? Because there was a decent degree of separation between him and the other running backs. This season is largely going to likely be by committee, and I think some of it will be based off of what the situational awareness dictates the best leverage guy, right? There's going to be opportunities to have some guys out of the backfield, and maybe that's going to be a Sesi Vailahi kind of specialty. Maybe you're going to have some dudes that have the ability to find cutback lanes. Maybe perhaps that's a little bit more of a Rodney Fields thing. You've got a guy who can break it outside, catch some passes, and put his shoulder down, jack of all trades. That's going to probably favor Kalib Hicks. Freddie Brock is an absolute speedster that can hit a second-level gear, unlike most running backs in the Big 12. And then naturally, Trent Howland, the big body Chris Carson-style beast, is going to factor into a large portion of this season as well. And I think part of this also indicates what we're doing offensively, right? We've had discussions on how it kind of feels like we're going to have a 2011, 2013-ish TCU Oklahoma State style of offense, which means there's going to be times that tempo is involved. And when tempo is involved, the downside of that is you put yourself in a lot of 3-and-out situations, which naturally means your defense is going to be on the field more often than not. Now, the bright side is you can put up points very, very quickly, scoring in bunches, which gives you the opportunity to claw your way back into ball games that almost seem like you're out of. We've seen it happen before. We've done it before. Oklahoma State used to be a very fast-paced, offensive-oriented team. This is going to put a lot of pressure on the defense. But another big thing that's happening here is there's an emphasis on turnovers, of course. Why? Because you're not really tackling all the way to the ground. It's just the new age of college football. Like Mike Gundy even mentioned, you do have to protect your assets. Of course, you want to get enough tackling, enough thud for them to get the physicality and understanding of what game days are going to be like. But at the same point in time, you don't want to be rolling out a bunch of dudes making 25, 30, whatever dollars a month and put them in a position where they're going to get injured. So it's a fine line here. But I do think that that's going to be beneficial for the running back room. Has anybody seen a season where all of the running backs made it through the entire year without having some minor hiccups along the way? That is the benefit to having a pretty loaded running back room, regardless of whether there's an Ollie Gordon level degree of separation. At the end of the day, it's all about production. And we're going to honor the 2015 team. If you go back and look at that team, I think Chris Carson had like 600 something yards. Rennie Childs had a few hundred yards. Raymond Taylor had a few hundred yards. The running backs each combined for at least a few hundred yards. So it was largely a running back committee style of thing. That's why J.W. Walsh was able to go in and spell for Mason Rudolph. So I do think we're honoring the 2015 team. We could look much like the 2013 team. At the end of the day, it's all going to be based upon production and fumbles, which again is another indication that offensively, we know that we're going to work fast at times and put ourselves behind the 8 ball if we do get some 3-and-out scenarios. So what you cannot have, if you're going to have a few 3-and-outs that you know are going to put your back against the wall at least a little bit, you can't compound that with turnovers. So the emphasis on the defense, since you're not able to full speed tackle all the way to the ground, is getting the ball out, punching the ball out. And there's ramifications now offensively if that were to happen. And if it's happening at the running back position, it feels like it's going to be synonymous all the way across the board. The defense is on a mission to create as much chaos, as much turmoil, and as many turnovers as physically possible. And the offense is obviously being punished to some degree if they do fumble and they do turn the ball over. That's an emphasis that sometimes is based upon what you foresee happening offensively. So if you know you're going to have a few 3-and-outs here and there, because it's inevitable whenever you're running different iterations of whether it be a tempo style of offense or if you're even trying to slow it down, you're going to have some 3-and-outs. That's the downside to offenses operating quickly, especially in turbo package situations. So you cannot make that worse with turnovers, because if you have a few 3-and-outs and then you have a turnover, you put yourself in a pretty massive hole that's going to be very difficult to dig out of regardless of who the opponent is. Right? If we have 4 or 5 turnovers against UT Martin, they're going to be in the ball game. I mean, heck, you could even potentially say that if we have 3 turnovers in the UT Martin game, it might be a ball game. Because if you go back and look at that K-State game last year, the first 3 quarters, they'd only given up 2 offensive touchdowns. So it's not like K-State was running all over UT Martin until the 4th quarter. I think you can look at depth as a large piece as to why UT Martin fell apart in that 4th quarter. But it's not the only time. They've hung tough with some of the other G4 or Power 4 schools in the country for the first 2 or 3 quarters. But the turnovers naturally are going to be an emphasis. But again, if there was a huge degree of separation, then somebody's going to be afforded a couple more turnovers than everybody else. And that doesn't appear as though that is happening. The fumble-rooski concept here is a major player. And that's good for the defense because it adds more tenacity. You got to think defensively, if they know that the dudes are being punished and put into a different style of a rotation predicated upon fumbles, they're going to go out of their way to produce more fumbles. And you know what? From a running back perspective, yes, it is frustrating knowing that every time you tote the rock, you're going to have people punching at you 24/7. But at the same point in time, it does build up a certain level of camaraderie and trust in the running back room. It builds up their ability to kind of, go through the hard times. It's going to happen. The point of going to this level in practice is to get them prepared for the game speed and game action. But at the same point in time, it's going to be exciting. I don't think that running back committee is all that bad. Just like I don't think having a quarterback situation that is somewhat reminiscent of a J.W. Walsh, Clint Shelf, or a Mason Rudolph in a J.W. Walsh situation. We won 10 games in 2013 and 2015 operating that away. Multiple running backs, a couple different quarterbacks. So we've proven that it can be done. It is possible, and you can win 10 games doing the daggone thing. So that appears to be the mission. I tell you this, the D is going to be significantly better than people are realizing. But, actually, we'll save some of that. It is time for you to stop losing some of the dollar bills. We've all wanted to manage our money at some point in time in our lives better and made it a little bit easier. With Monarch Money, it can be all of that plus more. Whether you're growing your savings or you're planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO with you 24/7, giving you the visibility and control that you need over your finances. Monarch Money is much more than just your traditional budgeting app. It is a complete financial command center. So you can track all of your accounts, investments, and spending all in one place. In addition to just managing money, you're also now able to build more wealth. If you share finances with someone, how could Monarch help you stay on the same page? Pretty seamlessly. If there's some financial goals that you're trying to meet, let Monarch Money be the ones that help you do that. AKA, it's time for you to take control of your finances today with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONCollege, all one word, at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com. Use that code LOCKEDONCollege, all one word, for half off your first entire year. Now we get to shift over a little bit more to the defensive side of the ball. And yes, you are seeing a lot of people coming out in OU camps talking about how the body type of Kendal Daniels is very rare and he looks ready-made for the NFL at this very moment. And they're not wrong. And we've all said the same thing. Unfortunately, there was a little bit of experimentation. And I might add, yes, part of it's going to be on the coaching, but it is very valid that the NFL scouts likely told Oklahoma State coaches and Kendal Daniels himself, potentially, that your future is at linebacker. So you going from, 205-pound safety, 225-pound safety, 245, 50-pound linebacker style of thing, maybe that is going to be the most advantageous route for his future. But it didn't work out in Stillwater, America. And it wasn't due to talent, right? Athletically, he is remarkably gifted. Well, Oklahoma State has another one of those dudes in Jacobe Oliphant. Jacobe Oliphant, much like Kendal Daniels, came to Oklahoma State 6'4", 195 pounds. And now the dude has ballooned up and he's put on some impressive weight, sitting at currently 216 pounds. That's impressive. That's an impressive amount of weight, and he's got more to go. He could easily get up to 220 before the season starts of muscle while keeping his body fat down. He's got his hands on several footballs. He's been a massive disruptor already. Yeah, going from cornerback to safety is probably going to be something that we see as beneficial to him. The question is he going to continue to get bigger? Is he going to get to that Kendal Daniels 235-ish, 240-ish style of number that would, unfortunately, potentially, inevitably move him to linebacker? That is going to be the biggest question. Speed is not a problem. His hands are not a problem. His versatility is not a problem. His ability is not a problem. The only thing that Jacobe Oliphant might have to worry about is the fact that we just tried this with Kendal Daniels, and we tried to move him and shake him and do different positions and give him more responsibilities in certain areas, and it just didn't work out. So much so that it caused Kendal Daniels to just stop trying on the football field, right? It's very visible, right? We're not throwing shade, but this is a redemption opportunity for Jacobe Oliphant, who, again, went from 6'4", 190, 95 pounds to now 6'4", 215, 220, right? Very big ordeal to have Oliphant in the mix. And his senior year, before he came to Oklahoma State, he had 86 tackles, 3 tackles for loss, 3 sacks, 2 picks, 4 fumble recoveries, 2 kickoffs returned for touchdowns. He was a first-team all-conference member, had 411 return yards, 211 total tackles, and earned 8 all-state honors when it came to track and field. So the dude came in with tons of athleticism, tons of versatility. Now he's been able to pack on the pounds and make it more transferable on the field. That is going to be the biggest question that we see, because this route with Kendal Daniels did not go swimmingly for Oklahoma State or KD, realistically, in the end. But Jacobe Oliphant is a very similar position. He's in a very similar predicament, who's putting on comparable pounds in the same amount of time that KD was in the beginning of his time in Stillwater, Oklahoma. The X factor here, though, is the coaching. I think Joe Bob is a great dude. I really do. And you all know my affinity for Nardo. But for whatever reason, the buy-in just wasn't where it needed to be. So Kendal Daniels never got to the levels that it looked like he was going to easily be able to get to. This is a redemption opportunity with Jacobe Oliphant. And the difference is the staff. Todd Grantham is all about his business. I'm going to keep saying it till I'm blue in the face. He does not care about anything other than getting the job done, right? So there's going to be some moving and some shaking, and there's going to be some dudes that are in the doghouse, whether it be, a couple big-time transfers that are productive from the previous stops and they're productive coming in. But you also have to pay attention to the meetings. Like, are you on time to everything? Do you show up and do what you're supposed to do at practices? Are you logging the appropriate amount of iPad, playbook hours? All of these things are monitored. The Catapult system monitors essentially everything that you're doing on the field. And then you do have to log in and essentially look at film diagnosis and playbook stuff and go through the sheets And it's all part of the monitoring process, which internally becomes the monetary gains. Right? What you're doing on a day-to-day basis is precisely what's going to make you more productive in this system. The aggressiveness is great. The high-flying attitude is great. The ability to get to the ball quickly, it's all great. But you have to have a couple dudes that are able to step up in massive moments to make these really huge plays that can determine the outcome of a ball game. I think Zaquan Patterson coming in from Miami had a very, very, very high expectation. But somebody like Jacobe Oliphant, yes, we did see him at times play this previous season, and he made some plays. He made some tackles and special teams on the sidelines. He got to play a little bit of defense as well. And you could clearly see that there was something there. There was some talent there. And then this is, I think, yet another indication that we're pretty solid in the back end when it comes to the cornerback position, because if we weren't, Jacobe Oliphant would likely still be just primarily playing corner. But the fact that we have the ability to slide him over, whether it's a pure safety, nickel safety, he's got the capability to do all of it. And we're finally going to get to see potentially what the KD evolutionary process was supposed to be. This is our opportunity to show everybody in the country that the Rob Glass factory is still the best in the business. And on top of that, this new coaching staff, Jules Montanar is a bad dude. Duffy obviously is gone, but we did have, somebody get bumped up from a previous GA staff. And I think that is going to be pretty beneficial to Oklahoma State. I think whenever you look at the Cabdidis, the Ryan Osborns, the Ryan McNamara's, all led by this wonderful NFL/SEC style Todd Grantham defense, you got to have some of these dudes. And you're going to have some of these dudes perform above their numbers, a.k.a. what they're getting paid. And that's the beauty of the financial compensation aspect, as we've covered somewhat recently in the last few episodes, is the motivation is the money. Some of the old motivations for wanting to play at X, Y, or Z university or crack the 2 deep or get on scholarship, those are largely, they're done. Either you're playing to the money that you're making or you're not living up to the money you're making. And on the other side of the coin is you're trying to play above the money you're making to prove that when you get these different reevaluations, right? Supposed to be multiple evaluation periods throughout the course of the season, beginning of the season, midway, and as you're getting towards the postseason. And if it's predicated on production, we could see by the end of the year somebody like a Jacobe Oliphant putting himself in a position to be one of the top NIL earners, not only by the end of the year, but naturally as we roll into this next season. It is exciting to see that after so much difficulty in the back end this previous season, that doesn't appear to be a major obstacle. Of course, you got Cam Smith on the outside. You got Kale as well. You got Eric Fletcher. I think whenever you talk about some of the returning guys, like the veteran, Kenneth Harris Jr., Jalen Davies coming over from UCLA, J.K. Johnson coming over from LSU, talent is not a problem. So much so that we said, Jacobe Oliphant, keep beefing up, buddy. We got a spot for you a little bit closer. So we're going to scoot you in a little bit because whenever you're 6'4", 215, 20 pounds, you can cover linebackers. You can cover running backs coming out of the backfield, whether it be in the flats or up the seams. Jacobe Oliphant might be that dude by the end of the year. Is there still going to be a logjam competitively? For sure. But the cerebral side of the game is clearly starting to enhance for him. You don't get that many pass breakups. You don't get your hands on that many footballs. You're not that much of a disruptive force if it's not all starting to kind of come together for you. So as much as we're excited about the Zaquan Pattersons from Miami and Darius Thomas from Louisville, you got to look at somebody that's already in the system, that decided to stick around, that decided to bust his tail and prove that not only can he do this, but we saw glimpses of Landon Cleveland. We saw glimpses of David Kabongo. If Jacobe Oliphant can be up there with those dudes, I think that proves that the new coaches have an understanding of technically how to get the most out of these dudes. They have a way of presenting the information that makes it more transferable to on the field. They're getting more buy-in. They're getting more Rob Glass factory production tangibly on the field. Again, the technical aspects of the game for Oklahoma State Cowboys this season are drastically improved. And we're going to be able to see that out of guys precisely like Jacobe Oliphant. It's time to pump up the energy. We got to pump up the volume here. It's time to fuel up and turn up with 5 Hour Energy's Transfusion. It brings the bold grape, ginger, and the lime flavor of your favorite golfing beverages together without the alcohol, of course. It's a quick, energizing shot to get you through the day, through the course, through the game. Whenever you're sinking birdies or trying to chip in for par, or if you're just simply out there drinking a couple brewskis and making a couple memories, well, you got to counterbalance that. Throw in the water, throw in some 5 Hour Energy, and it's a hole-in-one for your energy game. And be honest, there's going to be days out on the court that you just feel kind of off, or maybe you're not reading the greens all that well, or you're not getting off the box correctly. Maybe you just need an extra boost to stay sharp and stay energized and dialed in, because golf is a wild game where it's you against Mother Nature. Whenever you're having somebody in your group that's trying to pull off something ridiculous, you can match it with even more ridiculousness inspired by your 5 Hour Energy shot. The weirdest course in the world that you've ever played. Think of it, if you had 5 Hour Energy at your disposal, you're not going to want to just play 18 or 9. You're going to want to keep rocking and rolling. Playing golf is about having fun. It's about having good times with good people, and in this instance, with good flavors. The grape, ginger, lime gives you the best parts of your clubhouse go-to without chasing down the cheer cart, bev cart individual. So if you go to 5hourenergy.com today, that is the number 5hourenergy.com. You can use our promo code LOCKEDONGOLF, all one word, to receive 20% off your order. This offer is only valid through September 30th on one order and cannot be used with other promotions. The code is not good on subscription orders. So whether you're meeting up with your friends or you're trying to turn 18 into 36, get the energizing boost you need to power through. Order the 5 Hour Energy Transfusion. This is the best up-and-coming flavor in the game from 5 Hour Energy. Go get your 5 Hour Energy shots today to be dialed in for your next big game. We're going to go from the Lynx to quarterback coach Kevin Johns. And yes, Mike Gundy did mention that Kevin Johns was one of the basically top 3 candidates in the country that he had his eyes on, talking to other coaches that have not only played at Oklahoma State, but some coaches that have coached outside of Stillwater America that he has a lot of faith in. His relationship with guys like Nick Saban is equal parts phenomenal and somewhat surprising. But it's been good for Mike Gundy, and I think you're seeing that in this new iteration of the team. But whenever he's talking about Kevin Johns, and we've covered Kevin Johns specifically, but, a couple months ago, and as we're getting closer to football season, the numbers continue to kind of matriculate upwards once again. So it's a good refresher. Kevin Johns is that guy. Kevin Johns has produced several top-notch NCAA and NFL quarterbacks, all the way dating back to Nate Sudfeld at Indiana. He produced 7,879 yards with 61 touchdowns to only 20 picks at Indiana. With his last season, he threw for 3,573 yards with 27 touchdowns. Then he goes to Memphis, and immediately he gets a hold of Brady White, produces a 4,000-yard season with Brady White. They go 12-2, and Brady White has 33 touchdowns. The very next year, Brady White again throws up 3,380 yards for 31 touchdowns for an 8-3 record. And then right after that, they roll right into Seth Hennigan. Nobody saw Seth Hennigan coming. He goes to Memphis, throws for 3,322 yards with 25 touchdowns. Then Kevin Johns takes his talents to Duke, where he produced Riley Leonard. Very first year, almost 3K yards. Obviously takes his talents to Notre Dame because of the developmental aspect that Kevin Johns brings to the game. And then you have to also take into consideration that was the same point in time that he was heavily recruiting Haas Haney, and Haas Haney did commit to go play for Kevin Johns at Duke before he got the TCU offer, because he's a long-time, multiple family legacy at TCU. So that in and of itself means it's a pretty good grab for us to steal Haas Haney away from the Horny Toads. And then Kevin Johns goes to OU, and I think a lot of us remember that story this previous season. There were some up and downs, right? But at the same point in time, Michael Hawkins came in relief of Jackson Arnold, and he went game busters. He comes in, they beat Bama, They finished their season very, very strong. Michael Hawkins' development throughout the course of the season was obviously extremely visible. They go on, and he helps call some of the plays. They go on and beat Bama. They finished their season off quite nicely. So between Nate Sudfeld and Brady White and Seth Hennigan and Riley Leonard and Michael Hawkins, that's the track record for Kevin Johns. And what he did this previous year at OU was so impressive that they promoted him during the season and then even gave him more responsibilities when it came to help with the play calling situation. So the fact that OU got rid of Kevin Johns, or they were allowing Kevin Johns to leave, is actually somewhat surprising. Everybody's trying to adopt this, pseudo GM or official GM kind of role where you have more availability when it comes to assistants on the staff. Oklahoma State's experiencing that right now. Multiple linebacker coaches, multiple O-line coaches, multiple DB coaches. These are all things that are becoming somewhat commonplace. But I think Mike Gundy nailed it on the head. You have somebody who already has a connection with Haas Haney, a very, 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 very good relationship with Haas Haney, and then Haas goes to TCU, obviously develops a relationship with Doug Meacham, has an understanding of what Doug Meacham is trying to do, especially from the wide receiver position. He brings that understanding to Stillwater America, right? So that marriage right there made sense. When we got Kevin Johns and Doug Meacham, I just assumed it was a done deal that we were going to land Haas Haney, which is how our conversation started right before he came on the show. There was a lot to do with the quarterback room. And Kevin Johns has a proven track record of going to places where quarterbacks aren't necessarily thought of very highly or even known about. And he produces them into big-time quarterbacks that have big-time NIL money to transfer, or they put themselves in a position to play in the NFL. Nate Sudfeld played for years in the NFL. He started quite a few games with San Fran, if I recall correctly. And Brady White was doing miraculous things. Seth Hennigan was one of the biggest things to come through Memphis in a little while. Riley Leonard obviously did what he did at Duke, turned that into a Notre Dame opportunity and experience, ran with that, and put themselves in the national championship. That was the Kevin Johns tree. And then obviously what happened at OU last year. So when Mike Gundy says there's only like 3 quarterback coaches in the country that I trusted to be good enough to come into our situation and immediately provide dividends. The evolution that we're going to see out of Zane Flores is going to potentially fall on the shoulders of Kevin Johns. The ability for Haas Haney to improve some certain things mechanically or decision-making when it comes to throwing the football, that's going to be largely due to the impression that Kevin Johns makes on these dudes. So I think Mike Gundy nailed it. In Kevin Johns, we trust because we should, because he's proven to be that level of dude. Now that he's at OSU, I don't think that's going to be any different, whether it be Zane Flores, who's likely taking the bulk of stuff, or Haas Haney, if he ends up coming on a miraculous run here to close out fall camp. Regardless, I think we're in good hands. Kevin Johns is an individual that has a large resume in getting dudes to produce 3,500, 3,800, 3,400, 4,100 yard seasons. And the turnovers were pretty low on all of those dudes as well. So this is an exciting time to be Cowboy. We're going to be way better than people outside of Stillwater, Oklahoma, or outside of the orange-loving country are giving us credit for. There's just too much talent on this roster. There's too much athleticism. And the cohesiveness is pretty rare when you have 65 new dudes. That typically equals a pretty good season. All right, y'all. So we're going to have for this one right here. As always, I love you. God bless. Go Pokes. Thank you for tuning in to make this your first listen here in Locked On Oklahoma State, because you could be anywhere. So happy you choose to be here. Do me a favor. Hit the like button if you liked it. Obviously, by podcasting people out there, you're everything that makes this work. In addition to, we need to start jumping into the Big 12 squad shows. It's obviously something that I haven't really, changed thumbnails and promoted enough. So that's something we need to do. It's a fun time. Over half the time, we're just shooting the breeze, not exactly talking about football, but we do obviously sprinkle in some Big 12 coverage and some of the fun things that are happening, not only in the Big 12, but around the country. and we like to have fun with it. All righty, y'all. You know what to do. Hit the stars. Leave some reviews. All righty, y'all. Later, taters.